Hello and welcome. Thanks for your company, and thank you too to our resident parenting expert, Professor Matt Sanders.
Hi, nice to be here.
Now, Matt, every single parent has felt the impact of COVID, constant routine changes, some new challenges at home, and concern also for our children's mental and physical state. But for families who are caring for children with complex needs or developmental disability, things have been especially difficult, haven't they?
I think that's right, Katrina. And when you think about just the nature of parenting children with complex and diverse needs, which can range from kind of learning difficulties to children who have physical health problems or to have problems such as autism and so on, that there are unique parenting challenges that those parents face all the time. And in a situation where there is uncertainty, there is change, there is disruptions of routines, and where children may not understand the changes that are needed in family routines, this can be particularly difficult. Because sometimes just handling a transition or doing things in a different way can be a particular source of stress for those kids, and sometimes you get an increase in behavioural difficulties and other problems that a parent may encounter.
So Matt, can you talk us through some of the other stressors that could be facing parents of children with complex needs right now?
Well, I think one of them is that parents would conclude that their youngster is particularly vulnerable, and that they are vulnerable to the coronavirus, because if there are pre-existing medical problems that are placing the child's health at risk, then there's a greater chance that they may be exposed to this. The other thing that I'd just say is that the practicing of physical distancing with children with mobility problems is a particular issue, and given that the nature of the caring responsibilities that are involved in looking after these children, that parents, when they hear the rules about social distancing, they just think this just can't apply to our situation. It's very difficult to apply, so that can add to extra anxiety and concern over it. And of course, parents are also worried about whether the kinds of therapies and medical equipment and resources that are needed to provide the kind of treatment that is necessary for the child's health and well-being are actually going to be available.
Samaya's got a couple of issues, including a chronic condition which has meant we've had to self-isolate since early on in the pandemic. Also, we pulled out of school way before anyone else really did, just because of the risk. My little one, she struggles a lot to stay focused on her work and to follow the instructions, so she's a very good girl and she doesn't misbehave by ignoring me or running away or not coming when she's called or anything like that. And I know it's hard for her. It's really hard for her. So she's doing a sterling effort getting the work done when she does it, but it just takes a lot of effort. I can tell it takes a lot of effort from both her and I. I'm with her the whole time, because if I leave, if I stop paying attention, or if I move away even half a metre from her when she's schooling, she'll lose focus. So trying to keep her well as not let her fall behind in her schooling has been really heavy.
So with all these extra concerns and challenges, I can only imagine many parents are really feeling at the end of their tether right now. Can you please share some words of reassurance for us, Matt?
I think the important thing to remember is that even in a sea of complexity, when situations are really difficult at home, that the impact of these circumstances on families very much are influenced by our own emotional well-being and health as a parent. And when we're looking after ourselves, it makes it so much easier to take on other responsibilities that can be at the best of times challenging, but at particularly times like this when we're needing to reach out and to receive additional assistance with our parenting responsibilities, we should see that as an absolutely healthy, normal, positive thing to do and be quite prepared to do so.
Well, if you are the parent of a child with complex needs, or you know somebody who is, you should stay with us, because coming up after the break, we'll share some practical tips on how to support your children through these stressful times.
WIDEST.
Yep.
Welcome back. Well, Matt, there are parents who, even in the absolute best of times, have a lot more on their plate. And this crisis has been particularly challenging for mums and dads of children with a developmental disability.
Yes, it certainly has, and just the nature of being a parent of a child with complex needs that go across many areas of their life means that the regular challenges, when you're under extra stress as a family, can place an overwhelming burden on people at times, to the extent that they feel really concerned about not only the well-being of their children, but just how they're going to cope with it all.
Absolutely. Well, let's bring in our Associate Professor, Honey Häusler, once again. Thank you so much for joining us, Honey.
No problems, Katrina.
Honey, you've joined us before, but today you're here with us in a different capacity as the Medical Director of the Child Development Program at Children's Health Queensland. Can you just describe a little bit about what you do?
Predominantly, we focus on helping families and schools understand the complex needs and complex diversity of children that have developmental disabilities. That may take the form of an autistic spectrum disorder, intellectual disability, physical disabilities, or in fact all of the above together.
What kind of strategies or advice do you have for families who are really finding this particular moment in time tough?
I think it's really hard to generalise, and families do know their child best. I think that the key thing for families to remember is that most behaviour is in fact communication, particularly for those kids who don't communicate well. So the most important things I think as parents we can do is actually communicate through actions and words that it is your job to be the parent and to do everything to keep the child safe, and that is what you're trying to do. Using this as an opportunity to look at concrete ways you can ensure a safe environment. For example, seatbelts keep us safe, looking both ways when you cross the road, and washing our hands keeps us safe in this environment. What many kids will find difficult is some of those restrictions, like not standing too close to others, not giving someone a hug, and that may be really challenging for some children. Some children, in fact, benefit from pictures to help them understand the things we need to stop doing to prevent the virus from spreading, if you like. And one of the things that some families are saying they've found really helpful is the Birdie and a Virus book that Children's Health Queensland have put out. It provides a really good pictorial story, if you like, that helps to explain what the coronavirus is to children who may have cognitive issues that make it challenging for them to understand. I think there's a couple of other things that are really important. One is, as much as possible, keep a sense of predictability and routine for these kids. Daily timetables using pictures can sometimes be really helpful, and the timetable might go wrong at various times, but that's okay. And I think just having some structure and guidance is probably the most important thing for the day.
Establishing some of the smaller routines, like the routine for shower time, for example. I found that I was always using a lot of instructions and the same instructions every single day. So I've done up a lot of little small charts around the house for the micro routines to try to alleviate myself of those calling out, pick up your towel, hang up your towel, have you hung up your towel, please hang up your towel, did you hang up your towel? So that she can check it herself. So those routines they've helped.
So kids who learn differently, who really struggle academically, online learning has been really challenging for them. And I think where that's occurred, giving kids plenty of breaks and ability to be able to come back to work. And so long as kids have made an effort, I think that's really, really important.
There's some really great advice for parents there, Matt, but as Honey mentioned, sometimes things just don't go to plan. So what tips do you have for families?
Sometimes children get angry and frustrated because of the situation that they're struggling with, but it's us as parents who cop it. We cop that anger, we cop the frustration that's coming towards us. When that is happening, I think it's important to remember that children are communicating to us something about what they're finding difficult, and probably the worst thing to do is to reciprocate that with our own annoyance or anger or frustration, because that can just feed it even more. At a time where everyone is having to learn to tolerate a bit of uncertainty, children with complex and diverse needs can find this particularly challenging, but it is definitely worth persisting because really there's no option. You can only do what you can do. You can try to create as much certainty as you can out of an uncertain situation, but there's bound to be elements of uncertainty that remain that everyone, including kids, have to learn to cope with.
Well, after the break, we'll let you know where to turn to for help when parents of children with a disability just feel overwhelmed. Thanks for being with us. Well, Matt, parents have already been forced to be very adaptable in this COVID world, but for parents of children with complex needs, I guess there'll be times when perhaps reaching out for help will be the best strategy.
Parents need to remind themselves that they are not on their own and that there is support out there, and it's a healthy, normal and desirable thing to seek some extra assistance if you feel you need it.
Honey Häusler, we might come to you on this one. What help is there out there for parents?
So I think there's quite a number of things. I think prior to children going back to school, the education department was really able to support those kids with high needs, and I think did an amazing job in that space. However, if your child's still having problems in the adjustment and moving forward, then I think your child's teachers and therapists that they know are probably really well placed to talk through some of the issues that you're finding. Healthcare providers such as your GP or paediatrician might also be able to provide some advice around things, but probably at least in the first instance, your teachers and therapists who already know you and your family. If things are really tricky, then contacting your NDIS providers about whether there can be some increased carer support in the short to medium term might be a helpful way of proceeding for those children where there are really high risk behaviours. I think it's really important for families to stay in touch with how things are changing. And things may yet change up and down a little bit for a while. We're probably over the first big hump, but I think there might be times when, things might need to close down again for a short period of time in little pockets. And we need to stay abreast of those things without focusing too much on the stuff that we don't really need to know. If your child has a short or long-term health condition, really talking to your doctors about what decisions and how best to manage those conditions during this sort of next little while. I think they're the really key factors and key people to be involved to get those supports for you to support your child in this time.
Those are some great practical strategies. Thank you, Honey. Matt, I'll come to you now. What if it's the parents themselves who just aren't coping with the strain?
It depends a little bit on whether we're talking about a pre-existing problem that a parent has had with their own mental health in terms of problems like depression or anxiety, or a lot of worry about family conflict. For example, when families are under pressure and under stress, there are often arguments and friction and conflict that can occur that can affect a parent's mental health over and above the issues that stem from taking care of children. And of course, if you're in a family situation where there's not enough teamwork, you're feeling isolated, you're not feeling supported, there is little wonder people start to feel at times defeated by what they're experiencing. I think it's very important in this situation that parents learn to recognise whether or not their own mental health is really at risk and be prepared to reach out to seek the kind of professional support that they need, but not to ignore the fact that how well we function in terms of our mental health is affected by our relationships. So if the things that you can do to reduce the temperature, the friction, the conflict in the family, that's important. If there are things that you can do to reach out for additional support from perhaps extended family or others you just need to debrief with and talk to, all of those things can add to your capacity to feel on top of the parenting challenges you confront with your children.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Honey, for joining us and for your wonderful practical advice.
No problems. Thank you, Katrina.
And stay with us because we'll be back very soon with some more tips for parents who might be doing it extra tough right now. Thanks so much for your company. Now, Matt, I know most parents do an amazing job, but right now it is so much harder than ever before for mums and dads and carers of children with complex needs.
It is, but at the same time, big changes to children's lives that are needed right now create many opportunities. Dealing with change is hard at the best of times and it can be scary. But we should never forget, in a situation of uncertainty and of challenge, there are always opportunities for kids to be learning new skills and new ways of coping with difficult situations. So it's not all doom and gloom by any means.
So Matt, what about when your children want to express their feelings about the big changes that are happening right now?
When they're ready to talk, we need to be ready to listen. We need to be able to tune in to what it is they're trying to share with us about the nature of the worry, the concern, the question that they have, and to be psychologically available to them. If we're busy, if we're distracted, if we're focusing on other things, then that opportunity is often missed, because when kids can't talk about it at a time that they're ready to talk about it, there may not be another time that comes up. And so that's a missed opportunity. So I think it's also important to convey to our kids that it's okay for them to be feeling worried, to be feeling anxious about what's going on, because it's something that we're all sharing and going through together. And by conveying that to our kids, we're really saying to them, it's okay to talk about this too. There are some kids who, it's interesting that they convey how they're feeling and what they're concerned about by artwork, by drawings, by what they're sharing with us, a little glimpse about what they see in their social world, their family, their friends, their schools, and depending upon a child's capacity to draw and to have good motor coordination, that can also be a great conversation starter when parents are asking their kids to tell them about the painting, the picture, the drawing that they've done. But I'd say overall that if our kids are really, really distressed and are really concerned, and you're concerned about the child's emotional health, then be prepared to seek professional consultation about this, because there are things that can be done with children with complex and diverse needs to overcome mental health and other challenges.
So Matt, as usual, can you please give us a snapshot of some of those key points you and Honey have shared with us today?
In a snapshot, I think we've got to be prepared to reassure our kids that we're doing everything we can to keep them safe and to create as much predictability and routine in their lives as possible. We also need, as always, to make sure we're looking after our own emotional needs, and so the calmer that we can remain, the less distressed we can become, the easier it is for us to be able to do the parenting that's required to address our children's needs at this time. And finally, be prepared to reach out and to get support, advice and information from those you're already in contact with. Teachers, therapists, doctors, other healthcare providers who are involved in providing support to your child and your family. At a time like this, it is quite appropriate and in some cases essential that you do reach out and get the support you need.
Thanks so much, Matt. Hopefully some of the parents watching today who need a bit of extra help to carry on will go and seek that extra help. There's always somewhere we can turn.
There is.
Thank you for joining us again this week.
Thank you, Katrina. It's great to be here.
And you'll be back here again with me next week for more parenting in a pandemic. In the meantime, feel free to head online. We've got plenty of great resources there. Just Google parenting in a pandemic. And you can catch up on any episodes you've missed so far via 7plus. Thank you so much for your company. Until next week, stay safe and stay well.